For 100 years, no one had been able to comprehend floating light shadow because it required a high level of comprehension. No one in the world, apart from the 10 holy talents who had extremely high levels of comprehension, were able to comprehend floating light shadow. The first prince wanted to borrow the abilities of the 10 holy talents to help him comprehend the technique so that he could cultivate it, since it had been lost for years. However, every batch of the top 10 holy talents were invited to the sanctuary, causing all of them to be beyond the first prince's reach. Bai Shishong was the only exception. As the holy meet participant who had attained the 11th position, he was the only person, apart from the top 10 holy talents, who had the highest possibility of comprehending the saint-level cultivation technique, and he was able to do so. Master, is it possible for me to successfully learn this cultivation technique using this comprehension? The first prince's eyes were burning with excitement. The red-robed old man shook his head lightly. It is still not enough. After all, Bai Shishong is not a real sanctuary disciple and lacks a certain level of comprehension. His comprehension of floating light shadow is not perfect and he is a step away from successfully cultivating this technique. I will go back and refine his comprehension, so that you can understand it easily and successfully master this cultivation technique. Thank you, Master. The first prince was excited, however his eyes immediately turned cold. After this, Bai Shishong would become useless. Since he has seen the saint-level cultivation technique that has been passed down in the royal family for generations, and he tried to assassinate a holy seal-bearer, it is about time for me to kill him. The red-robed old man laughed sinisterly. Leave this matter to me. A pawn like Bai Shishong must be killed when the time is right. 3 days passed. The Martial Path Grand Event, the Holy Meet, which was held once every year in the Fengalan Empire, was about to begin. Strong martial artists, as well as people from all over the world, gathered to watch this grand event in the empire. Under the current peaceful and flourishing atmosphere, they moved towards the event hall slowly. At the third prince's palace, the ambiance was becoming increasingly nervous. At nightfall, in the pavilion, the third prince felt uneasy and he continued pacing back and forth as he read his book. Master, the royal family's dragons meeting is about to begin. We cannot wait for Suyu any longer, Lin Xiao said, as he could tell that the third prince was feeling uneasy. The third prince put down his book and lightly shook his head. Don't worry, there is still time. Suddenly, wind started to blow in the courtyard. A purple-shirted figure, who had the shadows of white clouds, appeared calmly in front of the pavilion. His face was as handsome, he was glowing with pride and with an indescribable charm. He had a pair of deep eyes which pierced all creations on earth. He had black hair that flowed like a waterfall, hanging naturally behind his back. He wore a comfortable purple shirt that was lightly blown by the wind. The third prince wore a smile as he walked towards him and cupped his fists. Congratulations, Brother Su. Your expression and abilities are incomparable to the past. Third prince, thank you for your help. Su Yu clasped his hands in gratitude. Lin Xiao looked displeased. He felt that it was not worth it for the third prince since he had wasted his resources. With his normal tone, he said, Su Yu, I hope you live up to the third prince's kindness. Su Yu's eyes shone and he looked at Lin Xiao. Brother Lin, I know that on that day you were not satisfied when you were unable to match up to me. How about we have another battle right now? Lin Xiao's eyebrows twitched a little. He felt that if he was more vigilant, he might not have lost to Su Yu. Therefore, he had been thinking about a rematch for a long time. Lin Xiao raised his eyes and looked at the third prince. The third prince muttered to himself for some time and nodded his head. He wanted to know why Su Yu was so confident. Of course, the third prince did not believe that in a mere 3 days, Su Yu's abilities would increase exponentially. He only felt that Su Yu's physical strength and injuries had recovered and that Su Yu was very full of confidence. With the third prince's approval, Lin Xiao was delighted. He was confident that he would not lose. It would be impolite for me to decline this duel. Lin Xiao stepped forward, raised his hands and uttered, mountain-splitting hammer. That hammer looked as though it came from heaven, with a frightening power just like in the past. Su Yu's expression was as calm as a sunny day. Tempest. Su Yu lifted his leg and gave a kick. With his kick, cold wind started to form, snow and ice started to fall. It was as if an ice dragon had ended the world. He had entered the world of snow and ice, made an army out of the cold wind, and caused everything to freeze. Lin Xiao gave a blood-curdling scream and retreated about 7 to 8 meters away. The thick and cold ice had condensed on his fists, causing them to freeze. His body was surrounded by a cold mist as though he had just walked out from a winter world, causing his whole body to shiver. Lin Xiao gasped with astonishment. The power of a stage 3 upper-class medium-level cultivation technique. The third prince's expression changed. 3 days ago, Su Yu's tempest was at stage 3 lower class. However, in a mere 3 days, it had actually gone up by a class. The third prince's eyes were filled with astonishment. Looking back at Su Yu, he had not moved the slightest bit from his original position and he leisurely withdrew his leg. He had managed to achieve stage 3 upper class for Tempest. As such, he was only one step away from achieving top class. Lin Xiao was astonished. However, he was dissatisfied. How could he admit defeat so easily? The vital energy in his body started to vibrate, causing the cold mist to evaporate. He closed the distance between Su Yu and himself, and roared, triple earth-splitting pattern. A green flame swept across the sky with a frightening power that could burn through the heavens and destroy the mountains and rivers, heading towards Su Yu. The strong energy of the attack had caused the wind to flutter against Su Yu's shirt. However, the wind was unable to disrupt his eyes, which were as calm as an autumn lake. Purple Star Thunderbolt. Su Yu counter-attacked leisurely. A layer of refined thunderbolt wrapped around his fists as if there were multiple thunder strikes, and they emitted powerful rays of light. When the fists collided, triple earth-splitting pattern dissipated in an instant. Blood started to overflow from Lin Xiao's mouth. His body ignored his orders and he was sent flying about 10 meters. Lin Xiao's organs took a huge blow, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. He had suffered a minor injury. As though he was in a fantasy, Lin Xiao was extremely astonished. Comparing that same purple star thunderbolt 3 days ago and to this one, its power did not just go up by a level. In fact, it seemed twice as powerful. As Lin Xiao pulled himself up, his eyes were full of astonishment. This time around, he was completely convinced. Thank you Mr. Su for showing mercy. The third prince's eyes shone brilliantly. Su Yu actually held back. If Su Yu did not hold back, would that fist have killed Lin Xiao on the spot? Su Yu had only spent 3 days training and had managed to become so strong, from being on par with a level 5 peak, to being able to easily kill one. How did Su Yu's abilities increase so much in a mere 3 days? The third prince combined the rumors that he had gotten from the Shanyu prefecture regarding Su Yu. A few months ago, Su Yu was just a normal silver student. However, as though he had risen like a comet, he cut open time and space, achieving the title of the Silver King with his abilities and suppressing 2 generations of Gold Kings. In no time, he defeated a demon student, making a name for himself as well as making the Martial Arts Training Institute a laughingstock. Su Yu's potential was rarely seen in one's life. If he were given more time, he would become a strong martial artist who was unmatched. The third prince felt that it was a pity. He then sighed depressingly, how good will it be if I could give you another 3 years' time to train? In 3 years' time, it would be difficult to ascertain how much Su Yu would grown. However, if he was still on the side of the third prince and went against the first prince, there would be higher chances of them being victorious against him. However, it is a pity that time and tide wait for no man. The Su Yu in his current state would not be of much help to the third prince. Brother Su. The holy meet is tomorrow. Is there anything else that you need? The third prince smiled. Before the catastrophe came, he was willing to do everything he could to help this demon student whom he was on intimate terms with. Su Yu pondered for some time, and lightly shook his head, resources are temporarily useless to me. What I need now is comprehension for when I am fighting. Within 3 days, he had digested uncountable amounts of universe's miracle mineral plant, causing his blood vessels to be full of energy. The continual usage of resources would be useless as his abilities would not be strengthened by them. By experiencing more actual combat, his level of comprehension would increase, causing his body to be strengthened further. Unable to help Su Yu, the third prince sighed. As he raised his head and looked at the sky, his expression gradually became serious. Su Yu, it is time for us to meet up with them. Them. Su Yu was confused. Surprised, the third prince said, can it be that the Duke of Shanyu did not tell you about it? When the third prince recalled the time when the Duke of Shanyu bestowed the holy order upon Su Yu before his death, he felt relieved as his doubts were cleared up. In that situation, the Duke of Shanyu must not have had the time to tell Su Yu. There are two kinds of people participating in the holy meet held by the Empire. The first kind of people are the students from the Martial Arts Training Institute. The Training Institute had scouted for all the geniuses in the Empire and they are the key figures in the holy meet. The second kind of people represent the royal family in the holy meet. For example, you represent the Shanyu prefecture. Every duke from the 12 other prefectures can recommend one person to take part in the holy meet. Aside from you, there are 12 other representatives from the 12 other prefectures. Moreover, in the royal family, each of the 3 princes can also recommend one person to participate in the holy meet. Including you, there are a total of 16 representatives from the royal family. Over the years, on the day before the holy meet, the 16 representatives would gather once and hold the royal family's dragons meeting. During the meeting, the representatives would have friendly duels and learn from one another. Understanding your own level of abilities before the holy meet is extremely useful, so it is important for all of the 16 representatives to attend the meeting, the first prince explained patiently. Su Yu pondered for a moment and his eyes shone. Will the first prince be spectating? The third prince knew what Su Yu was thinking and nodded his head. The recommenders of the 16 representatives will be there as well. Big brother and I will be spectating and you will be able to see him then. But, the third prince reminded, if you want to kill him on the spot and perish with him, I would advise you not to do it. You already revealed Diabolic Sword, the secret technique of the soul, to him before. Big brother would definitely take precautions against it and it would be almost impossible for you to kill him from another dimension. Su Yu had thought of that idea before. However, with the third prince's confirmation, he could only give up on the method of perishing together with the first prince disappointedly. Then, let's go. Su Yu's eyes turned cold. Ultimately, the only way for him to take his revenge was to attain the holy crown. Please wait for a moment. The person that I have recommended is still on his way. The third prince's eyes shone brilliantly. Each of the 3 princes could recommend a person for the holy meet. As such, the third prince was no exception. Su Yu did not feel strange at all. He had thought of using the holy meet as an opportunity to turn the tables against the first prince. As a calculating and shrewd person, it was impossible for the third prince not to have thoughts of that as well. Naturally, he had also arranged for someone trustworthy to take part in the holy meet. A few days ago, the third prince had said it was an additional bet. As of then, Su Yu understood its meaning. Behind the third prince, he had another strong martial artist. After waiting for half an hour, a young man, who walked like the wind, arrived with striding steps. He was about 16 years old and he wore a blue-colored robe. His figure was average and he looked normal. He had an ordinary expression and his eyes looked indifferent, as though he disregarded all creations on earth, giving off a cold and solitary feeling as a result. In his eyes, he treated Su Yu and Lin Xiao as though they did not exist, so that he would not be distracted. It was only until he was before the third prince that he knelt down. Third prince, we can leave now. Su Yu frowned. Rather than thinking that the young man was cold and solitary, Su Yu felt that the young man gave off an air of arrogance. Other than the third prince, who caused him to lower his head willingly, he did not pay attention to anyone else. The third prince said calmly, Dong Lin, please stand up. Dong Lin stood up extremely straight in his position. In his eyes, there was only the third prince alone, not Su Yu and Lin Xiao. Needless to say, he definitely had the abilities to be arrogant. Even though he was 16 years old, his abilities were at level 6 lower tier of the martial path. With his unbelievable talent, he was worthy of being called frightening. In the Martial Arts Training Institute, as far as what Su Yu knew, there was only one person who had achieved level 6 of the martial path. That person was the top demon student, Zheng Yilin. Not only had he managed to comprehend the holy decree, he had also managed to train until he achieved level 6 lower tier of the martial path. He was a frightening demon student with a chance of getting into the top 10 in the holy meet. Dong Lin, who was in front of his eyes, was comparable to Zheng Yilin. Since everyone has arrived, let's go. The third prince nodded his head. When he looked at Dong Lin, his eyes were filled with expectations and hope. Having felt the third prince's attitude, Su Yu understood the third prince had not placed his hopes in him. However, Su Yu did not have any objections. The third prince had given Su Yu precious resources and had kept him safe, but he wished for Su Yu to repay him. But, Su Yu's gratitude was insufficient to repay the third prince. Why would he bear hatred towards the third prince? The royal family's dragons meeting was held in the holy arena. The holy arena was built by the empire solely for the holy meet. The construction cost hundreds of millions and it allowed 10,000 people to view the battle. Normally, the holy arena would be closed to the public and there would be strict security. There would be a large number of soldiers stationed outside as guards, not allowing anyone to take a single step inside. It was only that night, when the royal family held the dragons meeting, that the holy arena would be opened for a short while, allowing members of the royal family to enter so that the 16 representatives could duel and learn from one another. That day, the 16 demon students who had been recommended by the royal family met one another under the moonlight. Of the 13 dukes, Duke Jushuan's whole family had been beheaded and the Duke of Shanyu had been thrown into heaven's prison, causing both of them to be absent from the meeting. Of the princes, the second prince had been killed by Su Yu. Other than that, everyone else was at the holy arena. Su Yu. The first prince's eyes shrunk. He did not expect Su Yu to be there. The first prince knew that Su Yu had slipped into the imperial city quietly. He did not expect Su Yu to actually participate in the holy meet. Could it be that he wanted to use the holy meet as an opportunity to regain his former glory? If Su Yu managed to get into the top 10 and become a sanctuary disciple, he would make a name for himself. When he returned, destroying the first prince would be as easy turning his overhand. However, when the first prince thought of Su Yu's abilities, he shook his head and laughed. There was no chance for Su Yu would get into the top 10. The number of demon students at the holy meet was comparable to the clouds in the sky. Even though Su Yu was strong, it would be difficult for him to compete with them, unless it was in a few years. However, the first prince would not give Su Yu that much time. When the holy meet ended, he would pay any price to exterminate Su Yu, who he believed was a great hazard. Hearing the voice of the first prince, Su Yu looked in his direction. Without hiding his murderous intentions, he said coldly, "First prince, I have said before, if I don't kill you, I will never be a man. The heaven, earth, sun and moon shall be the witness to my oath." The first prince's eyelids started to twitch, and his deadly intent became stronger. If Su Yu did not die, he would continue to feel uneasy. These words shook the hearts of the people who heard them. They had also caused the happy atmosphere to come to a standstill. The audience who knew about the hatred between Su Yu and the royal family watched with cold eyes. "You overestimate yourself." The first prince tilted his body and looked at the young man. The young man held a sword, had short hair and looked at Su Yu coldly with his sharp eyes. He gave off a very powerful vibe that could cause the mountains to rumble and create very powerful waves in the sea. Su Yu's whole body was under a very heavy pressure, as though he was being crushed by a mountain, causing him to breathe heavily. HMPH. Su Yu hummed coldly. He jolted the vital energy in his body, emitting a powerful vibe to rival the young man's, causing them to cancel each other out in an instant. "Watch your words." The short-haired young man hummed with disdain. The first prince gave a bitter expression. "Enough. Du Yuntian, why are you arguing with this kind of person, who do not know what he is saying?" The indifferent eyes of Dong Lin were filled with a rare fear. Level 6 upper tier. The third prince's pupils shrunk. The first prince had actually managed to nurture someone to level 6 upper tier like Du Yuntian. "Dong Lin, if you were to fight him, what would your chances of winning be?" The third prince's heart was shaking as he felt a bad premonition. One careless move and the whole game was lost. If Du Yuntian managed to defeat Dong Lin and the first prince ascended the throne, there would be no more chances for the third prince to rise to the top. Moreover, it is also possible that the third prince would suffer the same fate as the Duke of Shanyu, whereby he would be accused of treason, put in chains and thrown into the prison. Dong Lin's eyes were full of fighting spirit. He is very strong. However, if I display my full power, I might have a chance against him. Did that mean there was still a ray of hope for victory? The third prince's heart quietly felt at ease. The whole group of spectators sat down. In the big holy arena, there were only a few of them, causing the arena to be very open and spacious. At the same time, it was filled with a very cold atmosphere. To all the geniuses recommended by the royal family, tomorrow all of you will represent the royal family and duel with the 13 martial arts training institutes, achieving glory for the royal family. Tonight, all of you will duel and learn from one another, and this will be your warm-up for tomorrow's duel. The first prince portrayed himself as a normal spectator. He did not feel in the slightest bit that under the moonlight, the hideous scar on the right side of his face would be so gruesome and frightening. Du Yuntian carried a sword while he was standing. With sharp eyes, he glanced at the other 15 geniuses. When his eyes swept across Su Yu, he stopped for a moment. However, as though he was scratching the surface, his eyes swept past him after a prolonged glance. After looking at everyone, Du Yuntian shook his head coldly and withdrew from the arena. I will not be participating. The first prince laughed. Du Yuntian, why don't you have a friendly duel with them? There is no one here that is worthy of my blade. I am not interested. His arrogant speech left the remaining 15 geniuses enraged. However, the 15 geniuses could not be disappointed. As Du Yuntian was at level 6 upper tier, there were very few of them who were worthy to be his opponent. The only person which could be his opponent was the young genius recommended by the third prince, Dong Lin. However, from Du Yuntian's tone, Dong Lin was also not worthy of being his opponent. Dong Lin was full of pride. His eyes shone brilliantly, showing his desire to have a match with Du Yuntian. However, he got the hint from the third prince not to be forceful in trying to prove his abilities by defeating him, so that he could save his energy for the next day. The third prince's plan was that since Du Yuntian was arrogant and paid no attention to the rest of them, he would allow him to continue with his attitude. In the meantime, Dong Lin would save his energy and give Du Yuntian a surprise during the holy meet the next day. Unable to suppress his dissatisfaction and anger, Dong Lin picked a person to duel with. That person he picked was a strong martial artist of level 5 peak who came from the Qingshan prefecture after he was selected by his duke. I am Zhang Ling. May I ask for your name? Zhang Ling was content and free of fear. He leapt into the arena delicately. Dong Lin was arrogant and cold. Cut the crap. I will let you make the first move, come at me. Zhang Ling's face became serious. Aren't you a bit too arrogant? The Qingshan prefecture was vast and boundless. For Zhang Lin to be chosen from the millions of geniuses, how strong was he? However, when he came to the royal family's dragons meeting, he was actually treated with disdain. Dong Lin stood still for some time, with a cold and arrogant expression. He paid no attention to Zhang Ling, as though he had not realized Zhang Ling's existence. You look down on me too much. Zhang Ling launched an attack furiously. City demolishing raging flame. Zhang Ling emitted a vital energy which surrounded his body, as though it was a layer of raging flames burning vigorously. Waves of flames started to disperse in all directions. The spectators at the grandstand could feel the flames, heat from their seats. What an amazing cultivation technique. It should be a top medium level cultivation technique that has achieved stage 2 top class. Only a step away from stage 3, the highest stage of the cultivation technique. The raging flames wrapped around his body, with a heat so strong that they could burn through heaven. A very strong power could be felt in all directions. With a raging flame that could demolish a city, Zhang Ling headed towards Dong Lin. Covered in majestic flames, it was as though Zhang Ling wanted to burn Dong Lin to ashes. However, Dong Lin stood absolutely still, with his eyes unchanged, and still paid no attention to him. Nothing special. Dong Ling raised his hands and swung them violently. The raging flames surrounding Zhang Ling were fully extinguished with one swing. The fierce city-demolishing raging flame was easily pulverized by Dong Lin. Zhang Ling's expression changed abruptly. His strongest attack was actually pulverized so easily. Dong Lin was absolutely still. His eyes were shining brilliantly and were full of coldness at the same time. I have allowed you to make your move. It is now my turn. Hibernation destroying finger. Dong Lin stretched out his index finger abruptly. It was as if the sun had just risen from the east, and as if the world had become one with it. Layers and layers of raging flames covered his finger. The finger had a powerful vibe that shook the air, and fragmentary shadows of the flames piled up layer upon layer. Zhang Ling's expression turned pale as he was gradually filled with fear. City demolishing raging flame. In the dangerous situation, Zhang Ling used his unique skill again. Zhang Ling gave a horrible shriek and was sent flying for 20 meters, causing him to fall below the arena and spit out a mouthful of blood. Medium-level cultivation technique at Stage 3 top class. Su Yu's pupils shrunk. The first prince's expression turned grave. Dong Lin had actually honed his medium cultivation technique to Stage 3 top class. Only Du Yuntian paid no attention to it and he commented coldly. Zhang Ling has very strong fundamentals, with very thick vital energy and powerful cultivation techniques. As for cons, his execution of techniques is not smooth, and he has slow reaction time and weak willpower. Hence, he has a lot of weak points. Dong Lin has a very high cultivation base. His cultivation technique is at Stage 3 top class and he executes it smoothly. As for cons, he is weak at controlling his vital energy, causing him to waste much of it. If he continues to fight for a prolonged period of time, he will be at a disadvantage. Du Yuntian's words had hit the mark, dealing psychological damage to Zhang Ling as a result. As for Dong Lin, his eyes were cold. HMPH. Did I ask for your comment? As he glanced at the remaining 13 geniuses, Dong Lin retired from the arena. I will excuse myself as well. The rest of you are too weak and are of no interest to me. The remaining 13 geniuses' faces were burning with anger. In their prefectures, they were considered geniuses that could only be found once in 100 years. However, at the arena, they were continuously treated with disdain. They were extremely disappointed. However, upon witnessing Zhang Ling's sorry state, they knew that they were below Du Yuntian and Dong Lin and could only contain the dissatisfaction within their hearts. After the two of them retired from the arena, there was an awkward silence. The first prince looked around and laughed. Zhan Li, haven't you been yearning for a match with the Duke of Shanyu's son-in-law? Why not have a match against him now? The audience looked towards Zhan Li. He was a genius at level 5 peak, and his abilities were about the same as Zhang Ling's. A few people felt strange. Zhan Li was a genius recommended by the second prince, however, the second prince was killed by Su Yu. Zhan Li was 17 years old. He was thin and small, with a rough face and a violent personality. There was a cruel and ruthless vibe surrounding his body. He looked at Su Yu coldly, causing him to feel that he was being watched by a wild beast. Su Yu. Zhan Li bit his teeth and blurted out Su Yu's name. His voice was full of hatred. Zhan Li took big steps and went up to the arena. He looked down from the arena and pointed his fingers at Su Yu's nose. Get down now. Originally, he should have been enjoying untold wealth and high honor while he was at the second prince's service. That would have allowed him to soar to the top with a flap of his wings, causing him to be standing above millions of people. However, the death of the second prince had caused the future that he had foreseen to be completely destroyed. Among the spectators, he was known to have almost as much hatred towards Su Yu as the first prince. I will grant you your wish. Su Yu leapt onto the arena and confronted him coldly. Zhan Li was full of hatred and he launched an attack angrily. Iron Horse Kick. It was a medium-level cultivation technique that was at Stage 3 lower class. He raised his leg and as if there were thousands of men riding horses, the dust lifted off the ground continuously. The spectators' inner strength was boiling with excitement, their hearts beating violently, as they could feel the strong pressure in the arena. As Zhan Li came closer, Su Yu felt even more pressure. Zhang Ling, who was beneath the arena, had a fearful expression, but he was amazed. As expected of the genius recommended by the second prince, he actually managed to comprehend his medium-level cultivation technique to Stage 3 lower class. When he put himself in Su Yu's shoes, he was filled with cold sweat and his air of arrogance was greatly reduced in an instant. He found out that if his opponent were Zhan Li, he would not be able to last against more than 10 moves of his. It was difficult to comprehend a medium-level cultivation technique. However, the increase in power between every class was huge. At the Qingshan prefecture, Zhongling treated other geniuses with disdain. However, at the dragon's meeting, he felt that he was inferior to many others. At the holy meet, the number of demon students was comparable to the number of clouds. Among the demon students, he was considered below average. Zhang Li took vigorous strides. His leg technique was like millions of horses galloping, causing the spectators to shake with fear. There was a red light surrounding his leg. As he galloped, his legs were like a big volcano ready to erupt. In primeval state, Zhang Li violently threw himself at Su Yu. Kneel down now. Zhang Li's big strides were like thunderbolts. He aimed for Su Yu's chest. The wind blew away the black hair in front of Su Yu's forehead. The sand covered Su Yu's icy cold eyes. Su Yu started to move. Tempest. Su Yu shouted, a medium-level cultivation technique at stage 3 upper class. Rustle. As Su Yu raised his leg, ice and snow started to form and a cold wind started to surround the whole arena. A second ago, the arena was as warm and calm as spring fields about to bloom. However, a second later, the arena became an icy cold wasteland filled with snow. An extremely cold snowstorm surrounded Su Yu's leg. Su Yu's raised leg had chaotic swirls of icy wind continuously blasting out and around it. His leg looked like an ice dragon, roaring and blowing snow across the winter world. As the power from Su Yu's leg roared, it collided explosively with the millions of horses that were galloping and carrying soldiers. Strike, slap, rub. Zhang Li's and Su Yu's attacks collided. Zhang Li's savage eyes were full of astonishment. Rub, rub, rub. Zhang Li's mountain-like leg was covered by thick ice and frost. Zhang Li felt the cold sensation of the ice and frost pierce his flesh, sinking down into his bones as it spread throughout his whole body, including his arteries and veins. Thump. Zhang Li's legs were frozen stiff, which caused him to lose his agility. As he retreated, he lost his balance and fell on his butt. Su Yu stood in his original position calmly and innocently, his hair fluttered around his head and across his purple shirt, dancing in the wind. He had a willful posture, full of elegance and intellectual brilliance. It portrayed an extremely strong and warlike shadow that glimmered in the hearts of the audience. The match's outcome was clear. Zhang Li was astonished, he could feel the pressure grow immensely. It was clear that Su Yu had the skills necessary in order to achieve victory. Su Yu shot a glance at him indifferently, the second prince is a failure. The genius he recommended is also a failure. What a disappointment. Zhang Li's heart was filled with humiliation. He could not, however, disagree with Su Yu, as he was indeed incomparable to Su Yu. After his speech, Su Yu retired from the arena stoically. I will retire as well. These duels are meaningless. Su Yu did not feel any sense of achievement from beating Zhang Li. Zhang Li's abilities were incomparable to the third prince's bodyguard, Lin Xiao. At the grandstand, the audience gasped. Dong Lin was a frightening martial artist who was at level 6, and it was expected that he would be completely victorious against Zhong Ling. Su Yu, however, who was at level 5 lower tier, had actually managed to defeat Zhang Li, who was at level 5 peak, with one move. Comparing only the levels of their skills, Zhang Li was actually stronger than Zhong Ling. After witnessing this event for myself today, it seems like the rumors about the Duke of Shanyu's son-in-law being a caliber of a demon student are real. Humph. Just that rumor. Do you know about the Martial Arts Training Institute? It is said that, as the Silver King, he suppressed 2 generations of Gold Kings at the same time. As for the demon students in the Training Institute, he defeated them with one move. It is also rumored that he had managed to comprehend the frightening holy decree. In no time, rumors about Su Yu spread among the audience. Regarding the incident that occurred at Shanyu Prefecture, the citizens of the empire were more concerned about the Duke of Shanyu himself, as he was the strongest duke of the current generation. As for the Duke of Shanyu's son-in-law, not many people had inquired about him. As a result, there were few rumors regarding the Duke of Shanyu's son-in-law. As such, Su Yu's display of his abilities had awed the audience. Without question, he was the strongest representative of the royal family after Du Yuntian and Dong Lin. The first prince's pupils shrunk to needle points. At the Duke of Shanyu's palace, the first prince had confronted Su Yu head-on. Su Yu had resisted with all his might, but he almost died at the hands of the first prince. One could say that Su Yu was defeated after one attack from the first prince. However, in just a short time, Su Yu had actually managed to easily defeat someone of the same caliber as the first prince. His potential was frightening. A threat of indescribable fear filled the first prince's brain. At that moment, the first prince regretted that he had laid his hands on the Duke of Shanyu. What a huge mistake. The first prince withdrew his remorse. As he glared at Su Yu, his head was full of murderous intent. Su Yu could not be allowed to live. After the holy meet, he would convict Su Yu for his rebellion against the state, as he had killed the second prince, and would cause the whole empire to go after Su Yu. The first prince could not allow him to continue living for another second. The third prince secretly admired Su Yu, as he was impressive. When confronted by the second prince's lackey, even though he was full of hatred, Su Yu had restrained himself and did not display his true abilities. Du Yuntian gazed at Su Yu coldly as he commented. Zhang Li's leg technique is smooth, he managed to become one with his leg technique. The sound of his footsteps intimidated his opponent's spirit, and that intimidation was used cleverly. He had plenty of experience in combat and, in all, he deserved to be praised. Not bad. As for Su Yu, his cultivation base is quite weak and his foundation in martial arts is poor. His defeat of Zhang Li is owed to the power of his cultivation technique, as well as the power and complexity of Tempest. His win against Zhang Li was also largely due to his luck, diligence, strong willpower and his ability to guard against arrogance. One of the spectators remained calm and collected. As Du Yuntian was the strongest martial artist among the representatives of the royal family, he had the right to comment. However, his comment towards Su Yu was biased. It was normal for a martial artist to fight against another martial artist that was a tier higher than him. It was rare, however, for a martial artist to fight against another martial artist that was 2 tiers higher than him. As such, Du Yuntian could not stand Su Yu. When the audience thought about Du Yuntian and Su Yu's positions, they felt relieved. Su Yu shrugged his shoulders and remained composed. Du Yuntian was extremely arrogant, but Su Yu was too lazy to argue with him. Moreover, Du Yuntian's comment was not completely illogical. Su Yu's abilities had increased greatly and, as a result, his foundation was unsteady, he needed to train more. As for Su Yu's victory being attributed to luck, Su Yu declined to comment. Su Yu had only displayed part of his powers. If he unleashed his full powers, he could kill Zhang Li in an instant. Dong Lin looked at Su Yu indifferently and said sternly, "You barely passed." Su Yu laughed vacantly. He refused to listen to Dong Lin, he had no intention of being his friend. Humph. All along, it was Dong Lin who disregarded the others. However, when he was disregarded by Su Yu, he hummed coldly and stopped looking at Su Yu. "You better stay away from me during the holy meet." Though Su Yu heard Dong Lin's threat, he was too lazy to deal with him. The third prince could not do anything. Dong Lin treated people according to the level of their skills. Dong Lin always altered the levels of exerted skill to match those of his opponent, whether that meant toning down his power against weaker foes, or amping himself up for stronger opponents. However, he was very obstinate, it would be difficult to change that personality of his. As time progressed, duels carried on in the arena. The other 12 representatives had friendly duels and learned from one another. Dong Lin and Su Yu's matches, however, were at the very start of the Dragon's meeting. The matches after that were dull and boring in comparison. A gleam of light pierced through the azure sky. The sunrise's beauty was unmatched. The sunlight dispersed the darkness, spreading its warmth across the world into the hearts of the people, causing their blood to boil with excitement. It was time for the holy meet. Creak. After 1 year, the holy arena, which had been covered with dust, was formally opened. The excited audience waiting outside entered the arena one after another. The grandstand, which could hold 10,000 people, was fully filled within an hour. Outside the arena, unsatisfied people were held up. They hoped that there would be a vacant, precious seat available for them. Rustle. A huge number of imperial guards from the imperial capital came and dispersed the crowd, opening up a path that led to the arena. Groups and groups of people shuttled back and forth on the path. A huge portion of the group were young men and women full of pride alongside their frightening abilities. They were the students from the Martial Arts Training Institute of the 13 prefectures. Every martial arts training institute from the 13 prefectures had sent 10 of their strongest students to participate in the Holy Meet and compete for the Holy Crown. In Fengalan Empire, how vast was its district? How vast was its territory? How many proud demon students were there? Finally, all the demon students were gathered, starting the Empire's pinnacle battle. The 13 martial arts training institutes' chosen students entered the arena one after another. At the battle preparation area, there were seats prepared for them, next to the royal family's seats. Coincidentally, Shanyu Prefecture's Martial Arts Training Institute was the closest to the royal family's seats. After Sha Jingyu entered the arena, her beautiful eyes started to look around anxiously for a familiar silhouette. In a split second, she saw a young man in a purple shirt. His purple shirt flashed across her sight, gliding through the air under a cloud of floating black hair. He was handsome, like an attractive celestial being. He was refined, elegant, and full of spirit. Her restless heart became peaceful in an instant. If the purple-shirted young man was safe and sound, her heart was satisfied. He successfully earned the trust of the third prince. Seeing that Su Yu was standing by the third prince's side peacefully, Sha Jingyu's heart was peaceful as well. As though he felt someone looking at him, Su Yu raised his eyes and looked towards Sha Jingyu. He felt indebted but conflicted. Su Yu shifted one foot forward and turned into the shadow of clouds as he floated to Sha Jingyu's side, as elegant as duckweed on the river surface. He wanted to say something, but he did not know what. Sha Jingyu blushed lightly and she hung her head low. Her face then turned completely red and she did not know what to say either. After all, there was an embarrassing experience and an unfulfilled promise between both of them. A boy and a girl, one handsome and refined, the other an incomparable beauty. When both of them stood side by side, they seemed like figures pulled from a painting. Who is that lady from Shanyu Prefecture? She is as beautiful as a celestial beauty. If you look at her once, you would find it hard to forget her. Also, who is that guy in the purple shirt? He has an extraordinary presence, he seems almost non-human. I wish to know him. The hearts of the male demon students in the Martial Arts Training Institute of Shanyu Prefecture were overcome by jealousy. Sha Jingyu was exceptionally elegant and brilliant. She was also as beautiful as a goddess. She actually sacrificed her own innocence, however, without hesitation in order to save Su Yu. Moreover, they heard that Housemaster Sha intended to marry his daughter off to Su Yu, making Su Yu his son-in-law. Those rumors had greatly increased the hatred that the male demon students had for Su Yu. Su Yu, you are a representative from the royal family. What are you doing here at Shanyu Prefecture's Martial Arts Training Institute? Why don't you excuse yourself? Fang Qingzhou had a gloomy expression. Fang Qingzhou's father was an inspector at Shanyu Prefecture's Martial Arts Training Institute and, naturally, he would be at the Holy Meet. Although Fang Qingzhou did not have the rights to participate in the Holy Meet, he was brought to the Holy Meet by his father to watch the battles. His father hoped that watching the battles would be beneficial for his training. A few days ago, the Fang family's father and son had joined up with Sha Lingxuan and his group of people. At the moment, Fang Qingzhou heard the rumor that Sha Lingxuan wanted to marry his daughter, Sha Jingyu, to Su Yu. To Fang Qingzhou, that rumor was incredibly unexpected. As he pressed for more information, he found out that Sha Jingyu, who refused to be corrupted by evil influences, had actually shared a bed with Su Yu in order to protect him. Fang Qingzhou could not believe the news. The woman he wanted to marry had actually slept with another man. However, the current Su Yu was much different than his former self. The current Su Yu's ability was way higher than Fang Qingzhou's, and Su Yu was also a holy seal holder. Even though Fang Qingzhou was furious, he did not dare to be as arrogant as he once was. For now, he berated Su Yu softly. In reality, Fang Qingzhou was just putting on a strong facade. He was actually afraid on the inside. Moreover, his heart also felt small and humbled. It was said that the level 4 peak second prince was killed by Su Yu ruthlessly. From the empirical perspective, who would dare be as gutsy as Su Yu? Fang Qingzhou was a bit afraid that he would arouse Su Yu's murderous intentions and get himself killed. Hearing Fang Qingzhou's words, Su Yu looked towards his direction. A flash of coldness passed through Su Yu's deep eyes, and he said coldly, "Why? You have something you'd wish to say." Having felt Su Yu's murderous intent, Fang Qingzhou felt a chill down his spine. He drew back his neck and could not muster the courage to offer a retort. Since his father was not with him, he did not dare be reckless. Fang Qingzhou's nonverbal yield to Su Yu had caused a few of the demon students to stir. "You are a coward who bullies the weak and fears the strong. You are known for being arrogant in the martial arts training institute. You would even berate us, the demon students. In front of Su Yu, however, you are a dog, all bark, no bite." Sha Jingyu despised Fang Qingzhou to a great degree, she detested people like him. Sha Lingxuan understood the situation quickly. Dissatisfaction still remained in his eyes as before, and he reminded Su Yu of the current tension. "Su Yu, you were once a student of Shanyu Prefecture's Martial Arts Training Institute. It is inadvisable for you to stay here for a long time as it might arouse suspicions of collaboration." Su Yu looked back at the royal family. After he went to the Martial Arts Training Institute, many members of the royal family had been secretly watching him. They were taking precautions against Su Yu, as they did not trust him. As he nodded his head, Su Yu looked at Sha Jingyu. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Jingyu, I will give you an explanation." Sha Jingyu's heart started to beat violently, her face boiling hot red. With a dainty voice like the wings of a hummingbird, she said, "Yes." Rustle. Su Yu turned his body and leapt back to the royal family. Hearing Sha Jingyu's name coming out from Su Yu's mouth, Zheng Yilin, who was not too far away, frowned unhappily. Xiao Li frowned coldly. "Humph. How arrogant. Even though he left the training institute, he's still concerned about Senior Sha, and he actually called her, Jingyu. Does he really consider himself Housemaster Sha's son-in-law?" Jingyu was actually what Sha Jingyu wanted Su Yu to address her as. As Su Yu was no longer a student of the training institute, he was also no longer her junior brother. Hence, it was no longer appropriate for him to call her senior. Moreover, both of them were very close to one another, and it was not strange for them to call each other by their individual names. He does not know his position. Even though he is going to be killed soon, he is still such a nuisance. Zheng Yilin's eyes turned gloomy and the audience knew Su Yu's situation. Even though Su Yu entered the imperial capital alive, there was a chance he would not be able to leave in one piece. When Zheng Yilin turned and looked at Sha Jingyu, a thread of admiration flashed through the deepest part of his eyes. After a moment's thought, Zheng Yilin walked over to Sha Jingyu with a pleasant, warm smile. "Jingyu, have you thought about what we discussed earlier?" Sha Jingyu raised her eyes, her blush faded. She regarded Zheng Yilin coolly, unfazed by the fame and power he possessed. "Thank you, Senior Zheng, for your kindness. But, please call me Junior Sister or Miss Sha. I don't want anyone to think we're closer than we truly are." 1 month ago, Zheng Yilin had hinted to Sha Jingyu that he could demonstrate his holy decree for her to watch and learn. His condition regarding the demonstration, however, was that they deepen their bond together. The real meaning behind his words was less innocent. Sha Jingyu had to agree to become his girlfriend or fiancée before he would demonstrate his holy decree to her. In theory, the offer wasn't unfair, the holy decree was magnificent. Among 10,000 geniuses, only 1 or 2 unique geniuses would ever comprehend the holy decree. In the vast and boundless Fengalin Empire, talented people other than the monarch would appear, from time to time, but how many holy decree comprehenders would appear? The holy decree was precious, even very close blood relatives may not pass it on to one another. Since Zheng Yilin's sacrifice was huge, he expected some form of retribution, as was normal in such transactions. It was a pity, however, that Sha Jingyu had initially rejected him, however tactfully. Now she rejected him again, firmly. Both his offer and his attempt to use Jingyu, rather than her full name, she had rejected it all, coldly and firmly. Sha Jingyu had squashed any potential for any sort of relationship. Sha Jingyu breathed out, slowly, were all men the same? In her heart, she felt irritated. Beauty was, indeed, a blessing as much as a curse. She could suffer no friendships with men without fielding unwanted advances and inordinate ambitions. An example was Zheng Yilin. He had always seemed true and innocent in his friendship, truly, he had hidden his intentions well within his mind and soul, hidden for 2 long years from Sha Jingyu. He had initially used his identity as a senior to become friends with Sha Jingyu. It wasn't apparent to her that he had any ulterior motives. Sha Jingyu thought that she finally had a male friend that she could open her heart to. However, when he managed to comprehend the holy decree a few months ago, he became high-spirited and daring. He felt he had a chance to become the holy king, he got cocky and condescending. Moreover, he also felt that Housemaster Sha regarded him with respect. He became someone who no longer preserved his clean and honest friendship with Sha Jingyu carefully. Instead, overconfident and entitled, he revealed his true desires. It started as subtle hints. Then, his behavior became increasingly erratic until, finally, the whole affair peaked with his presumptuous request proposed to Sha Jingyu a mere month ago. After that, they had drifted farther apart each day. Zheng Yilin was an igniter. As he gained more confidence, he revealed the dark side that was hidden within him, including the greedy eyes he had cast on Sha Jingyu. As she walked away gracefully, Sha Jingyu sighed in her heart, there wasn't a single decent man in the world. As she lamented, a purple-shirted silhouette appeared in her mind. Like Zheng Yilin, Suyu had managed to comprehend the holy decree. However, Suyu had not asked for anything in return when he passed his holy decree on to Sha Jingyu. Not only that, he passed on all his holy decree to her, he didn't leave anything behind. From the start, Suyu had looked at Sha Jingyu with crystal-clear eyes, free of dirty thoughts. His eyes only contained gratitude, uncorrupted by presumptuous thoughts. All because of a bow she had bestowed upon him, all that innocent gratitude sprung from that single moment. As she thought of that, Sha Jingyu could no longer hold her laughter in, she laughed for a bit. Her laughing face was like a flower, free and natural, holy and pure, and extremely beautiful. Actually, there was a decent man. Wasn't he right by her side? Her heart started to feel at ease and she looked towards the silhouette of Suyu. She suddenly realized how agreeable she felt towards the notion of marrying Suyu. When Suyu was by her side, she would feel enriched and at ease. Zheng Yilin glared at Suyu coldly, humph. What is so great about someone who has just managed to comprehend the holy decree? Comparing our levels of the holy decree, he would not last beyond one attack of mine. Rumble, rumble. There was a commotion at the arena's entrance. As the audience stretched their heads to look at the entrance, 13 middle-aged men with frightening abilities entered the arena successively. Many demon students made noises of admiration as they recognized the inspector, who had jurisdiction over their own training institute. Suyu noticed Fang Yun, who was among these men. It was Fang Yun who had bent the rules and caused Suyu to be expelled. Hatred still boiled in Suyu's heart for Fang Yun. As for the other 12 men, without question, they were also inspectors from the sanctuary. The appearance of the 13 men from the sanctuary had caused the audience to be extremely excited. It was said that every person from the sanctuary was a legendary mythological figure, and it was rare to see even one of them, as they would disappear in the next instant. However, 13 of them had appeared in the flesh. Moreover, after the 13 mythological figures entered the arena, all of them stood at both sides of the entrance in respect of someone yet to enter. They bowed their noble heads in respect and dared not breathe too heavily. It seemed like they were welcoming someone supreme and frightening. The arena, full of 10,000 people, gradually became silent. The strange actions of the 13 mythological figures filled the audience with fear. Thud. Amidst the strange silence, the sound of light footsteps could be heard. It was as if feet stepped across the hearts of all in the arena. The sound of the footsteps was sometimes loud, sometimes soft. It was hard for the audience to find out how far away the supreme person was from the arena. Suyu's heart shook. What kind of powerful martial artist was able to create that kind of illusion? Thud. The loud and soft sound of the footsteps finally stopped. At the entrance of the arena, there was an old man wearing clothing composed of flowers. The old man was 80 years old. He had white hair and gray sunken cheeks as if he was near death. Although his eyes were old, they were so bright they astonished the audience. Suyu merely looked at him for a moment and, as a result, he felt a stab of pain in his eyes which caused him to look elsewhere immediately. As for the audience, they experienced the same thing as Suyu, they were unable to look at the old man directly. Suyu's heart shook, he was shocked. Could it be that this man was the Holy King? Welcome, Minister. The 13 respected inspectors knelt down on the floor onto one knee and welcomed the minister in unison respectfully. Their voices were so resonant that it pierced the heavens. Their voices were so respectful that it went straight to the heavens, extremely far away. That old man was one of the 9 great ministers of the sanctuary. The Holy King was training wholeheartedly and had no time to manage worldly affairs. As such, all the worldly affairs were managed by the 9 ministers. A sentence from every minister had the ability to change the imperial court's cabinet. When they stomped their foot, Fengalan Empire would tremble in fear 3 times over. Even if the monarch was incapacitated with a serious illness, bedridden and in a coma, if he somehow knew that the minister was coming, he would still need to be there to welcome him on one knee. Rustle, rustle, rustle. After hearing what was said, many martial artists quivered in fear. They also knelt down and welcomed the minister. Within Fengalan Empire, in the martial artists' hearts, the sanctuary was the holy land of the god of the martial artists. The 9 ministers, whose positions were greatly respected, carried out an existence so incredible that even the high martial arts masters bowed to them. Amidst the 10,000 people who were kneeling to welcome him, the minister entered the arena. He was the leader of the 9 great ministers, the fiery minister. The fiery minister's face was expressionless. He walked towards the distinguished guest's platform and sat down on the seat of honor. The 13 inspectors were in awe of the minister. All of them straightened their clothes and sat up properly, they dared not act recklessly. The fiery minister lightly opened his mouth, "We can begin now." His voice was resonant and clear as a bell, the audience was left in awe. Suyu's body shivered vigorously, and his soul quivered. Level 8. Suyu's pupils shrunk to needle points. Suyu had felt the presence of a level 8 before. During the battle at the Duke of Shanyu's palace, when the first prince broke his amulet, a flaming shadow of a level 8 appeared and its presence was comparable to that of the minister. The abilities of the fiery minister were definitely at the frightening level 8. He was a frightening martial artist, only 2 steps away from being comparable to the Holy King. Suyu's heart was shaking, it would not calm, even as time passed. The power of a level 8 left even him unsettled. Rustle. The referee leapt into the arena, the holy meet will officially begin now. All the participants will receive a holy order, he declared. With the 16 dragons from the royal family and the 130 demon students from the martial arts training institutes of the 13 prefectures, there were a total of 146 people. They would go up the stage one by one and take a holy order randomly. Suyu got a holy order that was made with an uncommon material and the number 9 carved on it. After the participants came down from the stage, the referee took out a sealed black box. He put his hands inside the black box and took out 10 randomly chosen balls, each ball had numbers on it. The people who have these numbers will belong to the first group. Number 1, 19, 23. The people who have these numbers will belong to the second group. Number 4, 6, 13. After half an hour, the 146 participants in the arena were split into 15 groups. For the first 14 groups, every group had 10 people. Only the last group had 6 people. Moreover, Suyu was assigned to the last group, he only had 5 opponents. After the assignment was complete, the referee loudly stated the procedure that would follow. The first round will be an elimination round. The ultimate victor of every group will have the right to participate in the competition meant to decide who are the 10 strongest martial artists. After his speech, the audience burst into an uproar. All their eyes landed on the last group. There were only 6 people, the chances of any of them achieving first place in their group were higher than the other 14 groups' chances. Many demon students were envious of the group that Suyu was in. The first prince sneered, "His luck is quite good. He's in the group with the best odds of coming out on top. He may actually make it to the final competition between the top 10. The third prince could not help but laugh. Suyu was very lucky. If Suyu were in other groups with either Donglin or Du Yuntian, he would be surely eliminated. With his current placement, however, he had a chance at the top 10. Zheng Yilin paid close attention to Suyu and frowned. "You are lucky. You had better not come across me." Apart from the fact that his group was the smallest, there was another reason why Suyu was so lucky. Among the 5 group members, the martial artist with the strongest cultivation base was at level 5 upper tier, the weakest, a level 4 peak. With Suyu's abilities, he had managed to kill the level 5 upper tier at Shanyu Prefecture. There was nothing to worry about. He would surely succeed in attaining first place within his group. The elimination round had officially begun. At the distinguished guests' platform, the fiery minister and the 13 inspectors' expressions were dull and undisturbed. Even though the participants at the arena were the most outstanding 10 great demon students from every prefecture of the empire, their fights did not manage to interest the minister and the 13 inspectors. The elimination round between the 15 groups begun at the same time. In accordance with the rules, each group member had to fight every other group member at least once. As such, the elimination round lasted an inordinate amount of time. One whole day passed. The elimination round for the 15th group has ended. The victor is participant number 9, Suyu. The referee declared abruptly. The first king of the group had emerged. The audience beneath the stage could not help but raise an uproar. What a lucky kid. The elimination rounds in the other groups are only half complete, and yet he successfully earned the right to participate in the next competition. He was even luckier than you think. His group members' abilities were common and not impressive. Apart from the level 5 upper tier, the rest of them were too weak. Even I would have been able to fight into the top 15. You should not underestimate him. Did you see his fight with the level 5 upper tier group member? He defeated him with one attack. That means he has the ability to fight someone of a higher tier than level 5 upper tier. The first prince sneered. Even though he was lucky enough to get into the top 15, he is still a bottom feeder, and will only be disgraced in the end. The third prince laughed but did not comment. Instead, he focused his attention on Donglin. With the emergence of the first king of their group, it was difficult for the distinguished guests to not look at him. The first king of the group was someone of level 5 lower tier. All of them shook their heads secretly. The fiery minister looked somewhere else indifferently. Only Fang Yun was stunned. On that day at the Martial Arts Training Institute, he had personally expelled Suyu from the training institute. He did not expect Suyu's luck to be so amazing that he would manage to fight his way into the top 15. Suyu returned to the battle preparation area and observed the remaining 14 groups' duels. In particular, Du Yuntian, Zheng Yilin, and Dong Lin's performances were the most eye-catching. The 3 of them were strong martial artists who were at level 6. In particular, Du Yuntian was a strong martial artist who was at level 6 upper tier. Lin Xiao secretly slipped the third prince a scrap of paper without any preamble. When the third prince looked at the paper, his whole body trembled in fear, his face paled. His eyes were filled with anxiety. As he looked at Dong Lin, still in the arena, his expression started to change. Suyu noticed the third prince's strange expression from the corner of his eye and was surprised. It was the first time he saw the third prince, who was usually so calm and composed, lose his composure. Third prince, what's happened? Suyu walked to the third prince. As Suyu approached the third prince, he realized the third prince's hands were shaking. The third prince's heart must have been extremely troubled. The third prince had a poor expression as he handed the scrap of paper over to Suyu. Look at this. This is the information regarding Du Yuntian that I had Lin Xiao investigate. The fact that a frighteningly strong martial artist such as Du Yuntian worked for the first prince was enough to spur the third prince into finding someone to investigate the situation. Although the third prince was hiding his capabilities and biding his time, it did not mean his hands were entirely tied. Half a day's effort was more than enough time for him to find out information regarding Du Yuntian. Su Yu took the paper and looked it over carefully. As he read, Su Yu's expression turned serious, his lips a thin line. Du Yuntian is actually the younger biological brother of the previous Holy Meat's king. Su Yu was shocked. At the previous Holy Meat, the participant who attained the crown was named Du Lin. He was the previous Holy Meat's strongest demon student and he had successfully entered the sanctuary following his win. Du Yuntian was actually Du Lin's biological younger brother. The relation between the two wouldn't be too concerning if that was the end of the matter. Du Lin had no power over deciding the result of the holy competition. Their relation, however, implied that Du Yuntian was even more powerful than his brother, who had already won the crown in years past. It was said that Du Yuntian had fought the strongest demon students from 9 of the martial arts training institutes. Among the 9 training institutes, all of the strongest demon students were defeated by the third move. His consistent victories over the other demon students in under 3 moves earned Du Yuntian the nickname, Du Yuntian of the 3 mythical moves. No one student had yet managed to stay in the fight long enough to see Du Yuntian's 4th move. His achievements were unprecedented. Du Yuntian was also much stronger than his brother, Du Lin. It was said that Du Yuntian was the strongest martial artist of his generation. He was unsurpassed and could beat any genius. 3 mythological moves. Su Yu's chest tightened. The geniuses in the empire had gathered in immeasurable numbers. If a king of his generation was going to appear, it would most likely be in that very arena. Su Yu was overwhelmed, his heart wrapped in darkness. No matter how the third prince tried to remain composed, his clear pupils betrayed the conflict within his heart. He had placed all his hope and his people's hope on Dong Lin. If Dong Lin won, the third prince would obtain the empire. If Dong Lin lost, the third prince would be killed. The information that he obtained, however, had sent him into a valley of despair. Do you know why Du Yuntian is so strong? The third prince was unaware of the way his own voice trembled with fear. His eyes refused to stay focused. Instead, they looked towards the fiery minister, who was above millions of people. Why? Su Yu asked seriously. The third prince laughed darkly and looked at the fiery minister. With indescribable dissatisfaction, he said, because Du Yuntian is the fiery minister's disciple. In every holy meet, the top 10 martial artists would become sanctuary disciples. At the sanctuary, the 9 ministers would choose some of the 10 martial artists who caught their attention to become their disciples. From then on, the martial artists who had been chosen would be under the supervision of their minister, respectively. At the previous holy meet, Du Lin had used his position as the number 1 to gain the favor of the fiery minister, and he had become the fiery minister's disciple. After some time, the fiery minister discovered Du Lin had a biological younger brother, Du Yuntian, who was even more gifted than Du Lin. The fiery minister personally rushed to the Du family home in order to measure Du Yuntian's abilities. He was amazed by Du Yuntian's abilities, so he stayed with the Du family for several months in order to advise Du Yuntian in his training. As a result of the fiery minister's mentoring, Du Yuntian's abilities increased greatly. Unless there was an order from the Holy King, the top 10 martial artists would need to go through the holy assessment before they could enter the sanctuary. Du Yuntian, however, may have already become the fiery minister's disciple. The holy meet was just a formality for Du Yuntian and the fiery minister. No one could compete with Du Yuntian for the first position. It could be argued that the final result of the holy meet had long ago already been decided, in Du Yuntian's favor, no less. Is he actually the fiery minister's disciple? Has he really been under the supervision of the fiery minister? Su Yu breathed heavily, his heart ached under the intense pressure of the notion. No wonder the third prince had lost his composure and seemed hopeless. It was impossible for the third prince to win his bet. As though he realized what was going on between the third prince and Su Yu, the first prince, just a short distance away, sneered, as if he had already won. Su Yu and the third prince were both left in shock. With his natural skill alone, there was no doubt that Du Yuntian was the current Holy Meat's king, but knowing he had the guidance of the fiery minister as well. Alternatively, what if a threat showed up at the competition? Would the fiery minister step in and ensure Du Yuntian's success? The bet had seemed fair, initially, but both Su Yu and the third prince now understand it had been anything but fair from the start. When Su Yu decided to participate in the holy meet, it had already been guaranteed that he would fail. Su Yu, however, did not have a choice, other than attaining the holy crown. He had no way out of his current predicament. Su Yu clenched his fists and centered himself. If he wanted to rescue the Duke of Shanyu and kill the first prince, there was only one path he could take. Su Yu had to attain the crown. As he refocused on his goal, Su Yu continued to analyze the scrap of paper. On it, he discovered more information regarding the demon students from the 13 prefectures. In particular, Shanyu Prefecture's Zheng Yilin was specifically interesting. He was the only demon student who had managed to comprehend the holy decree. Even Du Yuntian was unable to comprehend the holy decree. Among the demon students from the 13 prefectures, Zheng Yilin's abilities were the hardest to estimate. Apart from Zheng Yilin, there was Chong Nanfei, also known as the Demon King. Chong Nanfei was at level 6 lower tier and he was the number 1 demon student from the Martial Arts Training Institute in the Jushuan Prefecture. His level of comprehension was extremely high and his cultivation techniques were extremely powerful. Chong Nanfei's abilities were frightening. After all, he had managed to suppress all the proud and strong martial artists in the Jushuan Prefecture. It was rumored that Chong Nanfei had fought with many demon students from many different prefectures and he had never lost. Even Zheng Yilin, before he had comprehended the holy decree, had been defeated by Chong Nanfei. Apart from Du Yuntian, who Chong Nanfei had not fought before, Chong Nanfei was the obvious demon king. The royal family had their 2 dragons, Du Yuntian and Dong Lin. The martial arts training institutes had their 2 best demon students, Zheng Yilin and Chong Nanfei. The 4 altogether stood as the stars of the holy meet. No one could possibly compete with their raw power and skill. This was a serious matter. Su Yu made the most of his time and started to train. Under the effects of space-time manipulation, 1 day's effort was equivalent to 30 days' effort, which was a month's time and would be sufficient for him to further comprehend some of his cultivation techniques. In particular, he was a step away from making a breakthrough to stage 3 top class with Tempest. While Su Yu made the best of his training, the duels carried on in the arena. Du Yuntian, Zheng Yilin, and Dong Lin were the most interesting and strongest martial artists within the arena. In particular, a frightening level 6 lower-tier demon student was nothing special when compared to Du Yuntian, as he was defeated after only 3 moves by Du Yuntian. The legend behind Du Yuntian of the 3 mythological moves was not only a legend, it was actually true. After 1 day, all the duels had ended and the 15 strongest martial artists had emerged. At that moment, Su Yu opened his eyes, which were filled with disappointment. Even after comprehending Tempest for what was equivalent to 1 whole month's time, Su Yu felt he was lacking something. As a result, he was unable to make a breakthrough to the top class, and he could not display the full potential of Tempest. As Su Yu opened his eyes, the referee declared the last segment of the competition. The 10 Great Holy Competition will begin now. The referee declared expressionlessly. The 10 Great Competition was held to select 10 people out of the 15 survivors from the elimination rounds. In other words, 5 people would be eliminated by the end of this segment. Royal family and martial arts institutes alike, they were all extremely nervous. The top 10 of the holy competition would earn the rights to enter the sanctuary and become sanctuary disciples. As such, the upcoming battles were very crucial. The referee was expressionless as he took out 2 numbers from the sealed black box. The first match, number 10, Du Yuntian, versus number 18, Dong Lin. Du Yuntian of the 3 mythological moves. One of the 4 great and proud martial artists, Dong Lin. Beneath the stage, the audience burst into an uproar. No one had expected both of them to be matched against one another during the 10 Great Competition. The third prince's pupils shrunk. His heart started to beat violently and he felt his blood rush through his veins. He was matched against Du Yuntian so quickly. The third prince concealed his heart's anxiety and uneasiness. He was unable, however, to conceal the hope in his eyes. What if Dong Lin wins? The first prince who was beside him laughed derisively. "Third brother, seems like the odds are not in your favor." The third prince presented a composed facade, smiling lightly. "Brother, you are too quick in claiming victory. I have nurtured Dong Lin as I valued his potential, and there were no ulterior motives behind my intentions." "Really? If that is the case, then all is well." The first prince was in a good mood, though his heart was full of murderous intention. The first prince's third brother was more intelligent and capable than him. If the first prince had given his third brother a few more days, he might have found an opportunity to turn the tables against him. The third prince was too much of a threat. Once the first prince ascended to the throne, his first task would be to get rid of his brother. The third prince withdrew his fists into his sleeves and clenched them tightly. His heart was full of anxiety and his eyes were fixated on Dong Lin. "You better not let me down. All my hopes rest on you, Dong Lin." The phrase echoed through the third prince's mind again and again as he watched the match with rapt attention, eyes practically glued to the fight. Rustle, rustle. Two shadows leapt around the arena. One shadow was Du Yuntian of the three mythological moves. The other, a proud and strong martial artist, Dong Lin. Both Dong Lin and Du Yuntian were level 6, and extremely arrogant. They also represented the royal family, albeit different members. Dong Lin represented the interests of the third prince, and Du Yuntian the interests of the first prince. Their match was not only a test of strength between themselves but a contest between the two princes as well. The normal audience was ignorant of the true high-stakes nature of the match. The politicians in attendance, however, had broken into a cold sweat. This match would decide the future of the cabinet of the imperial court. If Dong Lin lost, the third prince would lose all power and would be doomed to die at the hands of the first prince. If Dong Lin won, the third prince would turn the tables to his advantage within a day's time. Du Yuntian carried a dragon spring sword. Even though the sword was sheathed, a thread of the sword's vital energy overflowed from his side. The sword was cool and swift, it was sharp in both its physical and spiritual nature. Dong Ling started to move in his blue robe. His eyes burned through the heavens with fighting spirit. His eyes were narrowed seriously in a manner he had never done before as he said in a low voice, "Du Yuntian, our fight cannot be avoided." During the royal family's dragons meeting, Du Yuntian had declined all challenges. When Dong Lin and Du Yuntian were matched against one another during the holy meet, however, Du Yuntian had no choice but to fight. Du Yuntian's apathetic eyes looked at Dong Lin up and down as he sized him up. After a moment, he lightly shook his head. "You are no match for me. You're overconfident, let me fix that for you." Similarly, Dong Lin was also extremely arrogant. How could he stand Du Yuntian's condescending eyes? Hibernation-destroying finger. Dong Ling roared as he stretched out his index finger. It rose to the sky as if pulled by the sun, as the earth turned with his movement. Dong Lin's finger was covered in scarlet swirls, like flames. His finger had a frightening power as if it channeled the energy of a beast awoken from its long hibernation. The power of a stage 3 top-class medium-level cultivation technique was great. Du Yuntian's gaze remained apathetic. He took a step forward and swung his dragon spring sword. The attack cracked across the landscape, like a thunderbolt that swept across the sky. Du Yuntian's attack was extremely fast and frightening. The feeling of the attack imprinted a cold memory on the hearts of the audience, which they would forever, fearfully remember. Titter. Bang. Dong Lin groaned and retreated quickly. His eyes filled with astonishment. His attack, a medium-level cultivation technique at stage 3 top class, had been easily dissipated by a swing of Du Yuntian's sword. The terrifying part was that Du Yuntian had not even unsheathed his sword. Du Yuntian was calm and composed. He leisurely placed his sword back on his person. "Your abilities were not too bad. You are still not worthy enough for me to draw my sword, though," he said coldly. Dong Lin was extremely shocked. "You haven't won yet," he roared. Dong Lin's 10 fingers were covered with energy. The energy was vital energy which Dong Lin's body emitted. Only strong martial artists of level 7 of the martial path and above could emit vital energy. A strong martial artist at level 6, however, could borrow the power of the extremely advanced level cultivation technique in order to just barely emit vital energy from his body. The power created by condensing one's vital energy into an attack was immeasurable. Red rays of light like the break of dawn covered his fingers. Dong Lin was covered in a mysterious and unpredictable atmosphere. 9 pulses incredible sword. Dong Lin roared. Swish, swish, swish. 9 of his 10 fingers fired beams of vital energy at Du Yuntian. The third prince was extremely excited. 9 pulses incredible sword was Dong Lin's hidden cultivation technique. It was a top advanced level cultivation technique that the third prince had found for Dong Lin, and he had paid a huge price for it. The first prince frowned for the first time. Advanced level cultivation technique, he cried, his voice choked. In order for a person to comprehend advanced level cultivation technique, he needed to have high levels of skill. The Martial Arts Training Institute was a place where geniuses gathered. As such, there were a few demon students who had access to advanced level cultivation techniques, but, even as demon students with access to the required materials, it was very rare for any but a few to fully comprehend the books successfully. Dong Lin's successful comprehension of an advanced level cultivation technique implied very high levels of skill. 9 distinct vital energies headed towards Du Yuntian and, for the first time, Du Yuntian's apathetic eyes narrowed into a serious glare. A streaming cold sword. Du Yuntian finally drew his sword. Clang, clang. The light from his sword shone in all directions, it was dazzling and glimmering. His sword was like an icy cold firefly, it pierced the sky. Titter. Ah. His attack was extremely fast, it caused the 9 distinct vital energies to dissipate. The remaining energy around Du Yuntian's sword following his first attack twisted like a thunderbolt and attacked Dong Lin's chest fiercely. Dong Lin gave a horrible shriek and a long wound appeared on his chest. His body was sent flying backward, and he fell off from the arena. Dong Lin had been defeated. Dong Lin was defeated after 2 moves by the legendary Du Yuntian of the 3 mythical moves. When Dong Lin fell off the arena, third prince's heart cracked. Unable to restrain his feelings any further, the third prince's face paled. His only opportunity to gain an advantage over the first prince had been completely destroyed. He had no way out, there were only 2 paths he could now take. Resign himself to his fate and wait for the first prince to find an opportunity to kill him. Or, escape from the empire and live in exile, like a stray dog. In one moment, all the third prince's hopes for the future had been shattered. Lin Xiao was terrified. His eyes turned slightly red and tears streamed down his cheeks. In his heart, he felt devastated. Even though the third prince was a good prince, why was his luck so terrible? Why had he ended up in his current state? Lin Xiao knew what future the third prince faced, and it broke his heart. As he wiped away his tears, he knelt down in front of the third prince. Perhaps, that was the last time he would be able to pay respect to the third prince in his life. The horse-drawn carriage has been prepared. Master, please leave the imperial capital. The escape route had been prepared a year ago, plans had been made in case Dong Lin failed. A group of selected soldiers would escort the third prince, they would carve a bloody path of escape for the third prince. As for Lin Xiao, he would command the third prince's secret bodyguards and resist the pursuing troops. With their weak and tiny force, how would they compete with the imperial capital? In truth, they could not compare to the force they would eventually face. One day, either tomorrow or long after, Lin Xiao's body would collapse in a pool of blood. His corpse would be laid out on a field, and he would be erased from the world. But, even if he were to die here, he would hold the sword in his hands tightly and use every last bit of his life to try and fight for the third prince, for hope. The third prince had saved his parents who were critically ill and given Lin Xiao the opportunity to achieve something noteworthy. The third prince had trusted him, as no one had before. Alive, Lin Xiao would be the third prince's most obedient servant. Dead, he would be the third prince's shadow. To die for the third prince was something he would never regret. The third prince looked up to the heaven and smiled sadly, the situation is hopeless. Does my crippled life require all of your blood in order to open a path for me? Master, we cannot waste any more time, please leave now. Lin Xiao's eyes were red as he urged the third prince on solemnly. The first prince witnessed the scene from a distance away and he laughed coldly within his heart. did you really think I would let you escape from the city? In order to round up Su Yu, the imperial capital had been sealed off by the first prince. He had made the imperial capital easy to enter, but difficult to leave. There were a great number of selected soldiers keeping watch at the city's entrance. Anyone who wanted to leave the city would have to undergo a check by the soldiers. The third prince's plan to escape by opening up a bloody path was nonsensical. At the distinguished guest's platform, the fiery minister's stern face had a gratified smile. His mouth, formerly pursed with displeasure, finally opened up for the first time. Duyuntian, not bad. The 13 inspectors who were with the fiery minister knew in their hearts that it had already been decided that Duyuntian would be the fiery minister's disciple, and they smiled obsequiously. The referee declared the victory of Duyuntian. After the declaration, he took out another 2 numbers from the sealed black box. The next match, number 9, Su Yu, versus number 17, Chong Nanfei. After the announcement, the audience boiled with excitement. The Demon King, Chong Nanfei. There were a lot of rumors regarding Chong Nanfei. He was the most dazzling genius in the current holy meet. The audience was full of vigor. To be able to observe the match of a strong martial artist like him would be extremely beneficial to their training. What left the audience in deep thought was the Demon King's opponent, Su Yu. Su Yu was considered a favorite due to his luck at the holy meet. He had been assigned to the 6-man group, where all his group members' abilities were common and weak, allowing him to fight into the top 15. Maybe Su Yu used up all his luck since now he has to face Chong Nanfei, the Demon King. Is there anyone who disagrees? What if his opponent was some random level 5 peak? Wouldn't it be lucky if he were able to fight his way into the top 10 and become a sanctuary disciple straightaway? Of course, all that gossip was just fantasy. Even if Su Yu was lucky enough to fight his way into the top 10, he could still fail the assessment. If he failed, he would be declined entry into the sanctuary. There had been many in the past who had ridden their luck all the way to the sanctuary doors, however, luck failed them all and, in the end, none achieved entry into the sanctuary. When he heard Su Yu's name, the third prince's eyes, which stared into space, gradually returned to normal. He smiled sadly. Let's get Su Yu, we will leave together. Su Yu had suffered the same poor turn of fate as the third prince, and the prince considered him a close friend. Therefore, providing Su Yu with a chance to escape would be his final gift to the martial artist. Lin Xiao became anxious. Their chances were better if they made their escape immediately. Things became more difficult with each passing moment. Su Yu, you have indirectly caused the death of the third prince. Lin Xiao blamed Su Yu secretly in his heart. The first prince started to ponder, Chong Nanfei. His abilities are slightly stronger than Dong Lin. Su Yu, seems like you're not fated to get into the top 10, haha. Once Su Yu was defeated, the whole empire would be waiting for him, ready to fall down upon his head. Chong Nanfei was 16 years old. He was charming, elegant, and refined. He wore a white shirt which glided along the air, and he smiled. When he was called, he went into the arena peacefully and naturally. After a moment, he attracted the screams of young ladies who fancied him. Those young ladies could be found everywhere. Su Yu's eyes shone brilliantly. With his toes, he leapt into the arena quickly with the grace of a floating cloud and the fluidity of duckweed on a stream. His purple shirt drifted along the wind in a flash. Su Yu had a brilliant face that was as handsome as a celestial being and a build that was refined, dazzling, and sparkling. He was full of confidence, and he was pure. Actually, not comparing their abilities, Su Yu is also very handsome. It's a pity that he is slightly weaker. An 18-year-old young lady moved her mouth. Haha, I also feel that Su Yu is more handsome than Chong Nanfei. Another extremely gorgeous young lady with beautiful eyes said. Having heard the whispers of those young ladies, Sha Jingyu became worried. She couldn't help but smile. What is charming about Su Yu is not merely his looks alone. It is the charisma within him that is so charming, she said softly. Chong Nanfei was surprised. Even though he was extremely handsome, when compared to Su Yu he felt unworthy. His eyes held a thread of admiration for Su Yu. Brother Su, both of us are elegant people. I do not like to use my power to bully the weak. Therefore, If you can last beyond 20 moves of mine, I will admit defeat. How does that sound? Chong Nanfei was proud of himself. Even though he felt he was still stronger than Su Yu, he admired Su Yu's exceptional elegance. Su Yu reminded him of himself, and he did not want to use his power to bully someone he related to so strongly. Chong Nanfei's actions had left a good impression on Su Yu. He smiled and rejected Chong Nanfei's offer. However, Brother Chong, thank you for kindness. However, I want to do my best in this battle. Understood. Since you are a noble person, I will grant your wish. Chong Nanfei admired Su Yu even more. The fact that Su Yu wanted to fight on equal terms meant he was truly an honorable man. Brother Su, be careful. Chong Nanfei took a huge breath and reminded Su Yu of the impending danger. Chong Nanfei stretched out his index and middle fingers. The two fingers were side by side, pointed like a sword. Lotus sword finger. Whiz. His hand was covered by an extremely green light shaped like a summer lotus leaf. As the sword gesture fluttered in the air, a faint white light covered Chong Nanfei's fingertips. Moreover, the green light helped to make the sword finger look as if it were a white lotus, holy and pure. The green light and white lotus which circled around the sword hand created, for a moment, the illusion of endless blue waves filled with pure white lotuses, rather than sea foam. That is a medium-level cultivation technique of stage 3 upper class. How average. The fiery minister commented coldly. The word, average, caused Jushuan Prefecture's Martial Arts Training Institute's inspector to heave a sigh of relief. The fiery minister was famous for his strict nature. It was not easy to even elicit an average reaction from the minister. It looked like the Martial Arts Training Institute of Jushuan Prefecture had managed to avoid being punished. If the Martial Arts Training Institute's performance was poor, the corresponding inspector would be punished. The remaining 12 inspectors failed to hide their envy as they continued to watch the match. Su Yu faced the attack calmly. His eyes shone brilliantly. Tempest. At that moment, a snowstorm formed and the cold wind whistled. The surrounding atmosphere instantly became 30% colder. The cold air filled the atmosphere with mist. Suddenly, it felt like winter. Su Yu's leg carried a vast amount of ice and frost. It was as if an ice dragon had been born, causing everything in the world freeze. Another medium-level cultivation technique of stage 3 upper class. He is only 14 years old. Yes, it's average. The fiery minister commented indifferently. Apart from Fang Yun, the 12 other inspectors were full of admiration. For him to be able to comprehend the cultivation technique to his current level. His level of comprehension might be above Chong Nanfei and Dong Lin. The royal family has indeed managed to nurture someone very talented. There were very few people who knew Su Yu's past. After all, Su Yu did not make a name for himself across the continent, and only citizens from Shanyu Prefecture knew him. Fang Yun's forehead broke into a cold sweat. He did not know whether the fiery minister would reproach him if the fiery minister knew that he had expelled Su Yu. After all, the Martial Arts Training Institute was a subdivision of the Sanctuary, which searched high and low for geniuses in the world. As for the royal family, to be nurtured by them was not as reputable as being nurtured by the Martial Arts Training Institute. If the Martial Arts Training Institutes were surpassed by the royal family in terms of finding and cultivating genius, then the Sanctuary would be extremely embarrassed. In the arena, the two attacks collided. Chong Nanfei was trying very hard to ascertain his opponent's strength by repeatedly striking with his sword finger. Su Yu caused snow and ice to form. It was very interesting. Clang, bang, rub. Rub, rub. As both of their attacks collided head-on, the audience realized this would not be a short fight. The Demon King, Chong Nanfei's face was astonished. He retreated about 3 steps and swung his fingers that were covered with thick ice and frost. He was quite shocked, a medium-level cultivation technique at stage 3 upper class. Su Yu retreated about 4 steps. It was the first time that Su Yu's attack was slightly inferior to his opponent's. It was quite rare, however, to see the Demon King astonished. He was at level 6 lower tier, which was 2 tiers higher than Su Yu. With such a great difference in their skill levels, how could Su Yu's attack be only slightly inferior to Chong Nanfei's? The balance of power despite the imbalance in skill levels was all due to Su Yu's physique. After being baptized in the Jade Fire Marrow, his physique was many times strong than average. Under normal circumstances, Chong Nanfei's attack would have sent Su Yu flying, but Su Yu was not normal. Again, Su Yu's eyes were filled with excitement. He could feel pressure building closer and closer to breaking into top class. Indeed, actual combat was the best way to strengthen his abilities. Moreover, Chong Nanfei's abilities were about the same as his, making Chong Nanfei the most fitting whetstone for his skills. Chong Nanfei stopped belittling Su Yu and he became full of fighting spirit. "Brother Su, be careful, I will not hold back anymore." Lotus Sword Finger. As the sword finger was fluttered in the air, it was as if a lotus was blooming. The effect was beautiful and dazzling. Even though it was the same attack, its power was stronger by more than 30%. Su Yu was not agitated. Instead, he was delighted. Rub, rub, rub. That attack caused Su Yu to retreat about 6 steps, he almost fell off the arena. Su Yu's eyes, however, were wide with joy. He gave a light roar and mingled with Chong Nanfei, the Demon King. Thump, thump, clang, clang. Clang, bang, rub. Their silhouettes danced like the wind, their abilities, unmatched. Two beyond-average artists displaying their raw power simultaneously. Beneath the stage, the audience was dumbstruck. Su Yu. He is actually fighting head-to-head with the current Holy Meat's 4 great and proud martial artists. Doesn't this mean that he has the abilities get into the top 10? At some point, without anyone realizing, the first prince had stood up, his face full of astonishment. His heart was filled with more fear than he'd ever felt. Su Yu's abilities had exceeded his expectations. If Su Yu continued the way he was, there was a possibility that he would get into the top 10. If he became a sanctuary disciple and came back after training in the sanctuary in order to take revenge for the Duke of Shanyu, then. For the first time, the first prince's heart filled with an unfamiliar emotion, remorse.